Well, hello! Today I'm going to help with a community garden composting workshop. And the idea behind this is to teach you how to compost because it's really, really easy. People sometimes are afraid to do it because they think they'll screw up, but not at all. Really, really easy. Now, for the Morongo Basin, and this is specifically for the Morongo Basin, which I'm a master composter for, there are certain restrictions. You never want to put compost on indigenous plants because the compost has things in it that are meant for food crops or for roses or flowers, but all the indigenous plants in the high desert are just doing fine the way they are. You never want to add soil amendment to indigenous plants. Okay, indigenous are plants that are from the area and not brought in from other areas. All succulents and all cactus do not need compost. Compost would be too wet, and you don't want that for your succulents or your cactus. You'll get bacteria infections. Okay, let's start. So, I'm going to ask you, and think about it since we're doing this, of course, because of COVID-19 on a video. If you were in my audience, I'd have you shout out these answers, but instead you're going to think about them as I ask you these certain questions. So, what is composting? What could that possibly be? Why would I want to do it? Okay, composting is nature's way of recycling natural things to be used later by natural things. It's how nature's been doing it forever, and I'm just here showing you how you could do it yourself to help your plants that aren't from the desert. Okay, so think of the 4 R's. What might those be? Well, we have recycle, reduce, reuse, and what's the 4th R that we're going to talk about today? Rot. Rot is hot. That's right, I'm a rock and roll star. Rot is what naturally happens to things when they die. They get rotten and they decay and they feed new living things. So that's what composting really is. And you know how to compost? How do you know? You do it by trial and error. That's right, trial and error for composting. All right, well, it's very easy. You only need 2 ingredients. It's like cooking with 2 ingredients. How many of you like to cook? How many of you like to eat? Great, well, this is going to be so easy for you. 1 ingredient, browns. And what color are browns usually? Yes, brown. And the next ingredient would be greens. And what color are greens usually? Fooled you on that one. Greens could be anything. They could be tomatoes and pumpkins or yellow squash. Greens are basically wet, new, organic material. And browns are dry, organic material. So browns could be leaves and dried grass, dried shrubbery, and I'll show you some other things because I know in the desert we don't have a lot of browns. In fact, we don't have a lot of greens either. So the greens are going to be from your kitchen scraps, your kitchen waste. Now there's things that come up like, well, if greens are wet and browns are dry, what are ground coffee? What's ground coffee? Well, it was roasted once, so it's actually a brown because it's not from the environment just as it is, it was processed. So your coffee grounds are going to be an actual brown. Now, why do we want to compost? Why do we even want to do this? It's nature's way of putting back into the soil. We've depleted our soil by growing things that don't belong there, whether it's a vegetable garden or flowers or different trees that aren't from the high desert. And so we need to put things back into the soil to help them grow, other than just water. Plus we have all this kitchen waste, and like, what do we do with it? We just throw it away, throw it away, throw it away, and it can't be used. Now if you compost, you can use it, and it's pretty amazing because you could have a bin this full of compost, completely topped of green waste, and as the compost does its thing over time, you're going to end up with something only 1 inch tall because it breaks down and all the water comes out. Now, again, composting is so easy. You need some browns, you need some greens. But there's some other things you need too. And you want to think about, what do I need to live? If I really think about it, what do I need to live? You need water, you need air, you need food. And can I fit 500 people in this room? No, you need space. So that's what your compost bin also needs. It needs water, air, the food would be your green waste from the browns that you put in it, and the space itself is the bin. But how much water do I need? And you are going to actually need to put water in because the wind out here dries things more than the sun, believe it or not. So you want your compost to be as wet as a wrung out sponge. So you all know if you touch a wrung out sponge, what does that feel like? See, it's not dripping, but if you touch it, your hands are definitely wet. And that's the #1 problem. Most people don't have their compost wet enough. And that is what you want to do about how wet. So you may need to sprinkle it, depending if it's been weather like this recently, every day. And do you have to turn it? Well, maybe, or you don't have to. There's different methods and different ways of composting. One is the very fast method, and you'll get compost very quickly. And that is where you water it, and you turn it, and you water it, and you add stuff, and you turn it like 3 times a day. And you'll get compost in about 3 to 4 weeks. I am so sorry, but I am way too busy to do that. No, way too busy. So you could do the average method, where you put your compost in together, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then you turn it and wet it maybe once every couple days, 3 days, 5 days. If it's in the winter, maybe once a week. And then you'll get compost in 4 to 6 months. Then there's a very busy person, lazy person way, where you just throw things in your compost bin, wet it down every so often, and just forget about it. And know that within a year to 18 months, you're going to have compost at the bottom. But it's going to take a while. But once that happens, you will continuously put things in the top, and continuously things will come out the bottom. And we'll show you some compost bins in a few minutes. All right, so now that we've been talking about rot, and rot is a good thing, do you know that there is a dog that helps with composting? Yes, there is. You know what kind of dog? A Rottweiler. Yeah, some of you might have known that already. That's true. So how do you compost? Well, again, it's the 2 ingredients. You want to get your green waste from your kitchen and a bunch of browns. But in the desert, you know, I don't have a lot of browns growing because there are none. So you can use other things as browns. If you know some people at the coast, they could give you their fresh cut grass. And Mark and I, we took our lawn out a while ago. We didn't have any grass anymore, so what did we do? That's probably the only thing that I could say that my father, who's 94 years old, actually provides me with my bags of grass. And those of you of a certain age will know what that means. Okay, no, I get the lawn clippings from my dad and I mix them in with my green waste, but lo and behold, look at this, a Starbucks cup. What was this before it's a Starbucks cup? And I keep asking, and finally we get to the major thing, which is a tree. So anything that was a living thing before, and not too processed, you could put in your compost bin, okay? Now, the more you rip it up, the smaller the pieces, the more surface area, which means the more water and more microorganisms, because they're the guys that really break things down, will fight and make sure that these things get all broken down. Lazy method, you just throw it in your bin and know sometime in the future it will break down. Faster method, break it up in pieces. And I highly recommend hire a small child to do that. Because how often and how fun is it that a small child gets to rip things up, right? So that is what I would recommend. So let's see. Starbucks cup could be one. Oh look, I've got some paper, and I have actually said to people before that this is very safe. And I had two people who are chemists actually eat paper in front of me, shredded paper from a photocopy machine, saying that the chemicals on it are so natural and inert, there's no problem with even eating this. But those of you who are art students, what happens if you have shredded paper and you add water to it? Right, you get paper mache. So you've got to make sure that that fourth thing, the air, gets through. So you want to stir it around and not have too high of a concentration of just shredded paper and water goo. So stir it. What else do we have? We have a cardboard little box. And yes, break it up in little pieces. The more it is broken up, the faster it breaks down. Oh, look, from wrapping paper, toilet paper rolls, certainly. Egg carton. We are so lucky in California and Washington State. Things that touch our food have to be food grade. And so even if there's glue that holds us together, it's food grade glue. You do not have to be so concerned at all, but rip this up and put it in your compost bin. But remember, it's your bin. You do whatever you want. If you just want to put organic food in there and then some sort of organic leaves that you find that are dried, absolutely fine. I look at this, a fossilized banana peel. This would be a brown now. Okay. What else do we have in here? Hey, we have a Buddy biscuit box with a plastic window. Do we want to put that plastic window in there? No, usually not. But Buddy biscuits are very proud of their plastic because it is cornstarch based. So yes, they say you could put the cornstarch base in your compost bin. All right. And we have some like to-go little containers there. And what else? Oh, but look at this, cornstarch base. This was part of a plastic thing that this melted a little bit in the sun. So yeah, you can put that in. You can try to put that in. And you know how they have those compostable cups that say, put me in your compost bin, I'm compostable. Look at this, compostable cup. It kind of got a little torn. I've had this in my compost bin for 3 years. 3 years. Did it break down? No. But little critters in there cleaned it really well. So it says right on here, corn cup compostable. I called them and asked them, hey, what gives? They said, well, you don't have a professional composting unit that gets to be 240 degrees. Well, no, I don't. Stop putting that on there. And then, you know, they did. They don't have that on there anymore. Oh, what do we have here? Oh, California Pizza Kitchen, sure. But you want to take off the cheese because the cheese has fat. There's a certain things you don't want to put in your compost bin. One of them is meat products or bones or fat. And the reason why, we'll get into that in just a minute. That's pretty much it. Oh, onions. They don't like white onions. For some reason, everything in the compost bin does not like white onions. So, can you put animal manure in? People ask that all the time. And I would highly recommend to not do that because what is the job of the animal's digestive system? But to get rid of waste products. So, certain things that you might not be able to control unless it's your animal and you know what you feed your bunny and your bunny's a vegetarian. So meat products and fats and cheeses and things like that, they have different bacteria and you don't want to grow those bacteria in your compost bin. You want the bacteria that belong there, the ones in the soil that breaks down green waste. So those come with materials that are vegetation, not the types that are meat products, okay? So that's the reason why you don't want to put that in. You know, bunny poo, again, I say, you know, do you really want to collect it outside? You can. It's really great because the bunny kind of broke it down already for you. Right now, with the rabbit hemorrhaging disease, don't do it, okay? I would say no, no, no. All right, what about these? Packing peanuts. We get these all the time, right? Well, Most of them I would say no, because they're made out of synthetic material. Again, these people who gave these to me in the package said these are cornstarch. You could always tell by dropping them in water. If they dissolve, you know they're okay to put in your compost bin. So, what does the letter A and a flower have in common? They're both followed by B's. Right, okay. All right, newspaper. Do I want to put in this shiny advertisement with chemicals on the outside that are carcinogenic? No. No shiny stuff. Usually that is bad. You don't want to put shiny stuff in. But how about newsprint? And a lot of times it says made with soy ink. So our newsprint is okay if it's even if it's color. You could tell also by putting olive oil on it and spinning it around, and if it comes off, then you know it's soy ink. So yeah, that's okay. Again, personal preference. You put in your compost bin whatever you want. A little tray, you know, some more rolls here, all kinds of things. Yes, envelopes, but take off the plastic window if it's from Southern California, Edison, or other places that would not use cornstarch. So make sure you take that off, okay? Now, so what do? You want to put a bunch of browns in the bottom of your compost bin, all right? You know, a good stack, about 10 inches to start. You could start with really coarse browns and coarse materials. So I have friends that have lots of plants, and so they bring to me, not the plastic spoon, they bring to me these coarse materials, little branches and dried leaves that are kind of big and thick and stiff. Just put a bunch of those on the bottom. And then when you're done with that, there's maybe some of these things that you tear up in little pieces, and some finer leaves. All right, a good stack. Wet it down. And then you start collecting your green waste at home. And I would say get a Tupperware container or some little container, because, you know, sometimes it's just really hard to go out to your compost bin after every meal. You don't want to do that. You want to make it fun and convenient. So put it in this light container with a tight lid so critters don't get in, and bring it out to your compost bin whenever it's convenient for you to do that. So you're going to make a kind of like an indentation in your browns, and then you're going to put your greens in it. And we're talking potato peels, carrot peels, those are really healthy for you. At the ends of the broccoli, the corn husks, the corn cobs even, but all the stuff that you would throw away when you're preparing food for yourself in the kitchen. All right? Then you want to cover it up with browns. So you make that little hole, cover it up with browns. The reason you do that is you don't want to get flies or fruit flies in there. Okay, and your compost bin needs to be really secure out here in the high desert, because critters like to burrow underneath and get in there. So my recommendation is actually before you put your compost bin down, you want to put hardware cloth. Hardware cloth with like a centimeter square. That's where critters can't actually come in there. All right, and then start putting your stuff in your bin. So we have a lot of critters that burrow and dig, so that's something. And make sure there's nothing that they could crawl in. Remember, pack rats could get in a place as small as a quarter, so make sure your compost bin does not have all those little tunnel areas for them to get in. Okay, so you do that. You put your browns in, you put your greens in the hole, you covered them. And just put some more browns in, and just keep doing that. Move around. Dig a little hole here and cover it. Dig a little hole here and cover it. Dig a little hole here and cover it. Okay? And just keep doing that. If you want to stir it, you can. If you don't want to stir it, you don't have to. But remember, it's in the desert. It's going to dry out just because the air is so dry. So you're going to want to wet it. You're going to want to wet it, and you're going to want to wet it. Remember, as dry as a wrung out sponge, okay? What happens if I screw up? Oh no, there's cockroaches in there, which happened once in the high desert with a neighbor. What do? Oh, just dig a hole and bury it. Otherwise, if there's not anything in there like cockroaches, it's very easy to fix. Hey, this apple core is the same apple core that's been in there for 3 months. Why didn't it break down? Usually if that happens, that means it's not wet enough. Oh man, that thing smells terrible. What is wrong with this compost bin? If anything smells, that means it's too wet. And what do then? You add more browns and you stir it. Okay? You want to remember, your compost bin is like a living organism. You never want to put too much of anything in. Like, think of a box of See's candy. How many of you would like to eat the whole box in one sitting? Yes. Okay, but how would you feel? Right. So think of it that way. Your compost bin can't have too much of anything all at once. All right? Unfortunately, you might have to throw some stuff away. If you have, say you made fresh squeezed orange juice and you have 27 orange peels. Way too much for your compost bin. But the bigger your bin is and the more stuff you have in it, the more forgiving it is with like items in it. So if you had 27 orange peels and you had this much compost in your compost bin, you could maybe put 6 or 7 of them in there and it would work just fine. Okay, so let's see. We should probably go right now and look at some compost bins at this point. Okay, so here's it's just a sample of one compost bin that's round. It has a lid. You put stuff in here, and it has a bayonet mount where it locks, which is good because otherwise critters could just push it up, and they do that. So you either throw the things on the top, as I say, you bury them in and keep putting it on top. And it was like, well, how do I get my compost? Well, look here. There is a door right here. And what you do is you would slide up the door and then dig out the stuff from the bottom when you want it. Okay? But remember, depending on how much effort you put in it, will be how fast. How do you know when it's done? Well, you know it's done because your compost inside is going to look like dirt. It's going to look like something you could plant with. But remember, not cactus or succulents. All right. And let's show you why you want to add compost to your dirt. Okay, and so why do we want to put amendment in our soil? Well, if you look at these samples of soil here, this is our wonderful desert topsoil. And remember, don't bust the crust. You really don't want to walk on areas that haven't been walked on because the nutrients in our desert soil is in the top like 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 inch. So when you step on that, you're killing the things that really help the soil. But this is the soil that comes out of the compost bin. And take a close-up look at this because see the difference in the color. There really isn't a lot of nutrients in our desert topsoil where the compost is all nutrients. And by adding this organic matter, you're going to retain water about 20% in your soil. That's why you don't want to give it to your cactus or succulents. It's going to be way too much water in there. But for your fruit trees or your roses, look at how much richer this is compared to our natural soil here in the desert. So compost bins, which one should I get? Oh no, I'm all confused. Well, it's your family and it's up to your family how you compost, what you do with your compost, and what you put in it and what bin you use and where you put your bin are all up to your family. Every family is different. My neighbor eats things a lot differently than I do. And even though lettuce and broccoli are both considered greens, we know that they're very different, don't we? So whichever compost method, fast, medium, or slow works for you, or whatever compost bin works for you, that's perfect for your family. You want it to be fun, and it's educational for kids. Psychologically, it's great because you get to put something back into the soil instead of constantly taking resources from the earth, right? It saves money because you don't need fertilizer, retains water, and neutralizes toxins. Oh, composting has all kinds of benefits. So we have bins like we just saw, which are the type where you could put things on the top and they come out the bottom. Then there's the other bins you might have seen are rolling bins. Okay, they're on some sort of tube thing where they're off the ground, and instead of with a shovel where you can turn it and water it, this you just very easily roll and put water in. But pros and cons like everything else. It may be faster, but you have to work it. Plus, you don't have contact with the soil to have the microorganisms from the soil to do your job. And if you have things like worms, because you can have worms in your compost bin, the worms do not want to go round and round in that environment. That's not a natural environment for the worms and other things that are helping to break down the material. And you might get other things. You could get all kinds of insects, and then you get spiders that eat the insects, and then you get lizards that eat the spiders. So it's a living ecosystem inside a compost bin. Okay, so do you want the spinning bin? And they come small and they come large. That's kind of up to you, what you think we're going to work for you. Remember, they will leak a little bit, because after you put the liquid in, it has to come out somewhere. You know, you want to keep it moist, but gravity is our friend, except if you're over 50. Gravity is our friend by making all the excess water go down and soak into the soil. So you don't have to worry too much about making it too wet if you just spray it. The excess stuff will go down. Okay, so what I want everyone to know who's watching this is I have these compost wheels, and the one side is backyard composting, worm composting. If you want to do just a little worm bin, you could do that in your house. That's a whole nother discussion. But feel free to contact me. I am more than happy to provide personal coaching for composting. I'm happy to give these wheels out to anybody who wants them. Okay, if you have any questions at all, feel free to contact me. I could be reached at Francene Kaplan at yahoo.com, and that's spelled FRANCENEKAPLAN. Totally happy to help you, give you materials, whatever would help you start your composting or continue your composting. Thank you so much. I hope this